Good evening and welcome, and thank you for everyone to be here tonight. And hopefully the weather will not get too bad too early and send you off safely. I call this meeting of the Montgomery County School Board to order at 7 o'clock on February 19, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item will be adopting our agenda. May I have a motion to adopt our agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. And next item will be Dr. Meyer's announcements.
All right, thanks. And for the agenda, we did take some things off the agenda tonight because of the weather, but we have left on very important things. Not that the other things were not important, but budget and redistricting are the main things we've kept on the agenda. So anyway, but the last couple of weeks, of course, a lot of things happening in schools and continuing with faculty meetings. I've really enjoyed meeting with all of our faculties. I do that once a year, and mostly talking about budget issues because our teachers have a lot of questions about our budget and what's going on there. So that's been great. Had the opportunity to, actually Ms. Frog and I, we spoke at the Chamber's Eggs and Issues a couple of weeks ago, and we did a presentation to a lot of the business leaders here in the area and gave them some information, and I think that was it's very educational to them about the situation we're in and things we're having to address in education. I'd like to thank the school board for allowing me to go to the National Superintendent's Convention and spend a few days with colleagues from all across the country. And really, a few of the things I got to attend, went to a great session on federal funding to address school safety and mental health, but I introduced to a lot of different grants that are out there that I'm not sure we're accessing, and I've already got Dr. Schultz working on them, and so that was a good one. Buildings that can influence learning, and how the instruction, how the environment makes a difference in how our kids learn these days. And so that's obviously a topic of our of present for us. Got to listen to Susan Rice, who's was the National Security Advisor and Ambassador to the United Nations, and very good. Bill Daggett was there. If you remember that name, Bill was the one he spoke at the National Superintendent's Convention, but he's the one that spoke to our teachers at the beginning of the school year.
That was a good one.
But and it was great to listen to him, although it was the same presentation. So, a federal education update on ESSA, which is very informative. And then went to a presentation. It was called Teachers Who Look Like Us. And it was on minority hiring. And, just to be quite frank, I think we could have done that presentation and done it 10 times better. Because I think we're doing some really good things here, and I think I even added to that conversation as well. And of course, as you know, at these conferences, there are 1,000 vendors there. But I ran across a really neat vendor, and I sent it out to this out to principals today. It's an app. It's called Pocket Points, and within an hour of sending it out, I guess Mr. Kitts sent it to his teachers. And a teacher started using it immediately. But what it is, it's a deterrent for kids to use cell phones in schools, where they actually put an app on their phone, and is it called caching the school? So when you get to the location, you hit the app, and it actually will keep the time that you're off of your phone while at school, and then it actually will, local businesses actually give coupons to kids, but then teachers can set up their own reward system, or principals can, for a day to reward kids for not being on phones at school. And so one teacher at Blacksburg High School already started and had her classes signing up, and so anyway, interesting app, but hopefully it will be something to encourage kids. Because there are times in schools where we do allow kids to use phones, for information, and for instruction. So it's not always a bad thing. Lastly, tonight, before coming here, I got to stop by Christiansburg High School, and it just put a big smile on my face to see girls practicing softball at Christiansburg High School. And
It looked beautiful.
I asked them how they liked the field, and of course they knew what response I wanted, and the response from one student was, "Well, it depends on if you close school tomorrow for snow." I said that should not be a condition of whether you like this field. But anyway, the kids were having a good time, and the ball was rolling just perfect on the field, and they will continue to do that. So, and the coaches were excited. So, it's not completely finished, the outside part of the field, but it will be, I'm told, by game day, which is first game is second week in March, I believe. And I'll let you all know when that is, and I'd love to have you all come out and at least watch us throw that first pitch out.
You
So
touch the field.
yes, absolutely. So anyway,
It's exciting.
okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Meyer. I'm glad you had a good time and safely back. Learned a lot. It's great to know what else is happening outside state of Virginia. The next item will be our public address. At this time and at each of our regularly scheduled meetings, school board sets aside 30 minutes for the citizens to address the board regarding educational issues. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak. The screen throughout the room and the laptop will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left and 3 minutes is over. As a reminder, the board doesn't respond to speakers during the address. Also, per our policies, we do not allow personality comments and use of intemperate, abusive, or defamatory language. If speaker violates this policy, they will be ruled out of order. I have 3 individuals signed up, and I will call names. Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes. First person is Regina Ann Hutchins.
My name is Regina Ann Hutchins. I live at 2040 Lake Vista Drive. Mud bike. I first would like to say to the committee, yes, I'm the mom who doesn't want the change of the redistricting for my son to drive up Interstate 81. But there's a bigger problem here than that. It's new schools in Christiansburg. And we need to work together with our Board of Supervisors in coming up with a solution to build these schools quickly. They say that they are not causing the problem for redistricting. They're not voting, but they're making you all do that by not giving the money that we need for our students to have new schools in Christiansburg. I understand the finance guy, he was saying Nova, they change it every year. But as Virginia Tech says, this is home. We choose to be here. And we want our children to be here. Don't compare us. And I would like to also say that this week at CPS is the Random Act of Kindness Week. Let us be examples to our children. Show a little kindness.
Thank you. Next individual is Heather Cox.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Heather Cox, 1006 Morning Dove Drive, Blacksburg. I don't have prepared comments, but I just wanted to say on the record that I'm very supportive of the board's movement to raise your what's the right word? Fee, stipend, payment for the service that you do, including benefits. And I think one of the things that's so important about that is that we're not going to have good representation of lots of different types of people from our community if this is a position that requires a lot of effort, time, and potentially not enough reimbursement to make it possible to balance other responsibilities. So I just want to say kudos to you for bringing it up. I would say that I would love to see, instead of just a comparison of like, all the other boards around us get paid this, but what's the minimum number of hours that you would have to commit to do a good job? And then what's that hourly rate look like compared to the other hourly rates that we pay in our county for higher order thinking, big decision making, et cetera? So thanks.
Thank you. The last individual is Ms. Blevins.
Good evening. Sherry Blevins, 240 Virginian Drive, Christiansburg. I have a junior at Christiansburg High School, and of course I am running, seeking the Republican nomination for Board of Supervisors, District B. I was in attendance for the last school board meeting, and after concerns about the overcrowding for the schools and citizens' comments, I wanted to see firsthand what the school systems that go through the schools and see the needs and just really connect with the teachers, the principals, and the citizens of Montgomery County. I believe every member on this board, and including after attending the last Board of Supervisors meeting, I think every member of that board, either publicly stating or speaking with me on a personal note, is committed and understands that Christiansburg strands of schools are in great need. I don't think that there is any argument on that, and that both boards are committed to making those improvements and hopefully to make those improvements as quickly as we can. I had the opportunity today with Ms. Parton. She invited me. I had reached out to her about wanting to tour the schools to see firsthand. If I'm going to represent this county, I need to know every aspect and what's going on exactly with all boards and towns. And I feel that that is something we need to work on as a county, strong communication relationships between the boards. I had the opportunity to meet Principal Morgan and Principal Lewis today, and several hours at Christiansburg Elementary School, and we asked them to show us the warts, the good, the bad, the ugly. I wanted to see it all. And there is no doubt that there are needs. We saw things from leaking roof to some security issues that were very alarming to us. And then, of course, the mobile units. Many years ago, I fought over safety concerns at Falling Branch Elementary School about those mobile units. And there are many needs. And so I was glad to have the opportunity to reach out to the teachers, to the staff, to the principals, and sit down with them, open discussion. What are your concerns? There were concerns even just outside of the overcrowding of traffic, of how to alleviate that they can't get the buses in and out. How that's amazing how much they had over drone pictures that the Principal Lewis gave us showing how backed up the roads are trying to get the buses and the car riders in. And it talks about just overcrowding of the schools. And let me tell you, commendable, these teachers, these staff, that even with these challenges, you know what we saw? We saw love. We saw smiling faces. We saw outgoing staff and teachers that love their job, and they were resourceful. We saw these, they don't have much room, and they utilize every inch of space in those schools, doing everything they can to accommodate our kids. And why do they do that? Because they love our children. And the lunch schedule, it's crazy. They don't have a dedicated gym area. So the multi-purpose room, the auditorium, all of it combined, within a matter of just a few hours, they have to take everything, move all the gym equipment, pull the tables out of storage, set them up, have the lunch, clean it all up, mop it again, and redo it. And you have one janitor that's doing all that, and the gym teacher, Mr. Stewart, helps too. But it's just crazy the things that these teachers go through.
Your time is
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry. So again,
We
just the
appreciate it.
opportunity and support for these schools. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
I was, thank you. I know this was comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your comments. This will wrap up our public address part of the meeting. Now the next item is our consent items. I think we have few field trips. Any questions regarding those before we consider them all approved as they are? The next item will be paying our bills. May I have a motion to pay our bills?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Bond and Mr. Chabaka. All those, any questions regarding the bills? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We approve our bills. The next item is our business part of our agenda, and it starts with our school nutrition presentation.
Yes,
I believe.
Yeah, Mr. Krantz will be coming up to talk about our finances of our school nutrition department.
I am just the man to get you started. It's pretty scary that I'm in charge of the technology.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
School nutrition, as we've talked about, is an area that we continue to experience some financial difficulties with. School nutrition by itself is supposed to be a self-sustaining fund. It's called an enterprise fund. And over the years, up until 2014, this group accumulated almost $1.2 million of funds. As you're going to see on the next slide, we've managed to get rid of those funds over the past 5 years. So this is a recap of our revenues. The thing I want you to notice is on the federal revenue side, which is where we get our reimbursement from our reimbursable meals, and look at the total revenues below that, our total revenues in 5 years have increased $13,000. In that period of time, our reimbursement rate, with our biggest portion being free, reduced, and then paid, we've increased from 3 cents to 38 cents. Our breakfast rate's gone from 3 cents on the lowest end to 21 cents. So our reimbursement rate has gone up for every meal sold, meaning that in order for our revenues to stay flat, which is what they've done for the past 5 years, means our participation is decreasing. Now in that, your expenses, and picture this, an elementary school that has 222 students, 250 students. You're going to manage that on your meals per labor hour, it's called. It's going to be at least 3 people. Somebody to run your cash register, somebody to do moving food from the warmers to the front of the line, and somebody then helping to get the kids through the lines. That's whether you had 1 student come through, you had 1,000 students come through. That's the cost of having a basic school nutrition operation. So the expenses, as you see, have gone up with our salaries and benefits, and it's not because of a lack of effort on the part of school nutrition to manage its affairs. It's that we have to have a certain number of staff and a certain number of staff hours just to run school nutrition. So our expenses have gone from $1.9 million to $2.3 million. Our food and food supplies have gone from 1.7 down to 1.3. Now, you would typically, in order to break even, will want your payroll and your food costs to be no more than 80% of every revenue dollar. In our case, our 2 components are well in excess of 98 cents. Today, for every dollar we sell, we lose 6 cents. So we're in drastic shape. As you can tell from the net income line shown there, we've lost $1.119 million in 5 years. And we're projecting this year for the first time to not have anything left in the till. Preliminary estimates are we'll be about $38,000 short. That's a number that can be absorbed today within the general purpose fund. But as we look into the future, there is no more money in the reserve side. Every dollar we lose is going to have to come out of the general purpose side. And that obviously will be a significant challenge for any district, not just our district, but for any school district in the entire country. It would be a significant challenge. So what do we have to do to make this thing up? Number one, understand this is a participation problem. Okay? You're not going to solve it cutting expenses. It's too big of a hole. We have to increase our participation. In order to increase our participation, we have to increase the meals we serve from a reimbursement standpoint. We have to increase our a la carte offerings. We have to focus on getting products that our students want. We have to comply with the federal law, we have to comply with the state rules, but at the same time, we have to do a better job with our menus in serving students what they want, not necessarily what the ideal world is, okay? What I learned coming out of the commercial sector with a very prominent school district that I thought as a parent, I knew what a school system was and I had no clue. But the thing I learned, and it's held true as I've gone from district to district, every school is unique, and that makes sense. Every school is their own marketplace. Their needs, their wants is going to be different. And we, as school nutrition, have to run it as a business. Now that sounds bad, but it's true. We're competing with McDonald's. We're competing with the grocery stores. We're competing with everything every child eats at home each and every day. If every child ate 2 meals with us in 180 days, we would have served them 33% of the total meals they would have eaten in a year. That's it. We don't have them long enough to change what they want. We need to find a way to give what they want, still meeting the rules of the regulations. Now, one of the things that's been a significant input negative to districts throughout the country has been when the regulations changed under President Obama, which the best intents, let's drive and stop obesity. I have room to talk. When we did that, we went to whole wheat products. That's not what our children, and a lot of children don't eat that. We also went to smaller portion sizes. All of that negatively impacted what's happened. And as a result of those things, we also saw our staff stop eating with us. So if we're going to turn this around, we have to make 2 groups come back. 1, we have to get the students in the door. And 2, we have to get our staffs coming back into our cafeteria. And those are 2 huge hurdles. They're not going to happen overnight. But I do know that you can do it. But we're going to have to be committed to doing that each and every day. So any questions?
Let me start this. How much will we lose next year? You'll let them know if we continue down this path.
$400,000 minimum.
That's five teachers we could hire.
Yes, sir.
It's about a 1% pay raise for our employees.
Yes, sir.
A little less than that.
And a bunch of walls we could put in CPS.
And a bunch of walls we can put in ZPS
Sorry.
and renovate our buildings.
It's 4 school buses.
It's
Yeah.
4 school buses.
I mean, there's a lot of, and the needs are great. And Dr. Meyer's exactly right.
Do you know of any other school divisions that actually have to supplement their food service program with the?
No, sir, because, I mean, you just can't afford to do it.
Yeah. So all other school divisions we know of.
Are all covering their
I don't want to
costs.
be the first. I don't want to be the first.
Oh, no.
Neither do I.
Well, I've said from the get-go that, why is it that we've gone to all those nutritional things that are supposed to be so good for our kids, but kids are still getting larger than they used to be when they didn't have any of those guidelines on the school lunches. And I went to many sessions at different conferences, and all that sounds great, but in reality, it's not working. So,
Well, I think From my point of view, I think execution is also a pretty important piece of this, right? I mean, we still have to meet those guidelines. And obviously, there's other school systems that are finding a way to meet the guidelines and still serve a product that, that the students want to eat, want to buy, that the staff can participate in. So I think, I don't mean to, you know, I almost want to say that this seems to me to be somewhat of a straightforward problem, not a simple problem. But, you know, for us to do this on our own, you mentioned something about our nutrition program, not for a lack of trying. So, you know, obviously we're going to have to make some changes. And I think that the time frame on this is, I think, more critical. So,
We're going to have to blow it up. The way we've done business, we have to blow up. We really do. It's that dramatic. $400,000 loss could easily turn into $800,000 if you're not paying attention. It's a penny's business. So the way we've done business, and this is no disrespect to the team, because I think they work extremely hard,
They do.
but we've got to blow up the way we've done business and come at it at a totally different approach. We're not going to do it with the same old methodology.
No, and just tweaking this recipe and that recipe is not gonna net us what we need.
No, ma'am.
And it would take a long time for the students then to go, oh, this is good now, because they've already lost interest.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
what do we have a timeline for? I'm assuming we're going to
This
be
has
hearing.
to
We're going to
change
be hearing
before
from
next
you.
July. Yes, sir. But
We're gonna be
this
hearing from you again
this-
with-
We can't afford $400,000 hit
No.
in the general purpose fund. Our needs, we have real educational needs that need to be addressed.
This will be a continuous conversation as we work through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And move forward with our team, is some thoughts of things we can do.
Okay.
So yes, this will,
I mean, you have my support on
Yeah.
This is more of a
on
heads
these.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plans,
Exactly.
plans
You're
in
right.
I
place.
do have one question. I'm sure we're not the only school that is facing this or will be facing it. Is that something that the larger decision makers of what it needs to be in the nutritional value of a school lunch, are they hearing this more than, oh, we're going to lighten the load a little bit? I mean, I'm a believer, even though I think it's a little far past, maybe kids have lost interest, but you bring back the pizza of old time and the rolls of old time, and there's not a restaurant around here that could handle it. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, I'm wondering, are they hearing that cry?
I have a meeting with the state in a week to kind of stress that, you know, I think Montgomery County has a strong reputation in the state because of our compliance with the rules and regulations. But in the phone conversation, they were kind of surprised at the financial condition that we were in. And so we're going to meet just to talk face to face about how we got here and what we need to do, what we're seeing we need to do to kind of turn that thing around. And it was a very positive conversation with state officials.
But hopefully maybe they'll hear, that'll start the train of other school systems saying, we, you know, needs to change.
And it does. They've heard the same message from me with Richmond Public Schools because we experienced the same, and we are all free in that district.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Krantz.
all right.
Presentation part one will continue.
Mr. Krantz will continue to be up
He'll
for the
be
rest of the night,
standing.
actually. Mr. Pauly will continue to help him with technology.
Well, I haven't followed how they've got this set up. Control, Alt, Delete.
No, it's not delete.
I know.
Hang on. That's the one, right?
Yes. Okay, well, good evening again. So we heard the message at the meeting on the 5th. So we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to kind of show you what the committee did so that we have tried to be extremely upfront and transparent in the process. Okay? So we're going to go through some of the stuff. On this slide, you get to see, because there's been statements made that you could rezone your way out of the challenges that the Christiansburg Strand has. Let me tell you that is not the case. Okay? Right now today, all of our elementary schools, if we used every seat that the elementary schools have, we'd be sitting at 95+%. Okay? So while you look on here, Price's Fork sits at 65.85% utilization, and Eastern Montgomery sits at 62.15. If you look at Price's Fork, what we know is scheduled for development right across the street. What I know landowners that are looking to develop their property along Price's Fork as Virginia Tech continues to expand. We believe very strongly that these seats are kind of already reserved for that future growth. Eastern Montgomery, every time we send a bus on a mile, that's $3 a mile. Kind of gives you a good barometer on what a cost is. And that school today only has about 100 extra seats to 150 extra seats. But when you look at our needs on the Christiansburg Strand, you see that today, on 100% occupancy, which is not our ideal, this is an old chart, by the way, it shows 196 empty seats. Now, your correct number at 85% is not 508, and don't ask me how I got to those numbers checking this, all till I was blue in the face. It's 431, so I apologize. I thought we had uploaded that. But wait, the handout you have is correct, okay? So my point is, just on today's enrollment, there's not enough seats available at Eastern Montgomery to address all of Christiansburg. Okay? If you look in 2024, it's not 624, it's actually 530 on your handout. Again, there's not enough seats sitting at Eastern Montgomery to address that situation. Okay? Now, the other thing you'll notice that changed from what you saw in the original presentation on the 5th to today is that utilization percentage of 115 is actually 113, and the other one's 113, and then in 2024 it's 119%. So we're well above the 85% threshold just in the Christiansburg Strand. And all indications that's going to continue to grow as we look even beyond 5 years. Now, when we talk about the timeline, and there's been some comments that we haven't been as transparent. I mean, generally it's been positive, but there's been some concern that we haven't been transparent. So, one, everything we've done has been posted on the webpage. Number two, the Redistricting Committee held 3 public meetings and did that within a 3-month period of time, starting in the latter part of November through mid-January. We've done 6 public meetings here with the school board, where we've talked about the redistricting process and what we were doing. And we've actually sent out 5 letters to families. Now, does that mean we've not made a mistake where a child who was in, say, option 3, who is not attending CES, CPS today, they're attending another school within the Montgomery Strand? We've tried to pick up everybody. Did we miss 1 or 2? That's possible. But every effort's been made to try to identify every possible student and family that would have been impacted by the redistricting options we've talked about. So the criteria we've utilized, balancing our building utilization. As we talked about, today we're at 95%. We have to lower that because our population's growing. Our population's changing. Look at Gilbert Lincoln's. In 1 month, we picked up 32 students that weren't in our projections, weren't known. In talking to Virginia Tech, it was 1 ethnic group that we picked up. Now, let's say that had been an ethnic group that now required additional services than what we traditionally offer. That's where you need that 15% so that the staff at the school has the resources, and from a facility standpoint, that they can meet the needs of their student population. When we're at 95% plus, we don't have the room to do that. Now you're using every nook, cranny, and corner trying to address it, and that's a challenge. It's not conducive. Think about us as workers. We go to the workplace, we want certain things available to do our jobs. It's the same thing when a student goes to school. They need that certain environment in order to make it conducive to a good quality educational experience. Minimize the impact on students. The committee did everything to do that, and you'll see on the last slide where we actually ranked each of these. Use major roads and natural boundaries whenever feasible. That was done. Maximize the walkability wasn't applicable in this particular situation. Establish clear feeder patterns and continuity. That was done. Assure an efficient system of school bus transportation. We actually drove from one point to another point on each of the different options, as we'll discuss in a second. Make all efforts to establish contiguous zones. That was something we tried to do. And make all efforts to minimize the division of clearly identifiable community components. That was probably the number one driving factor. We didn't want to break up communities. Knowing, though, that a redistricting by its very nature breaks things up. But we tried to minimize that as much as we could. So there was three main options that the committee looked at. Option one, as you can see, was the area west and north of 81 with South Franklin Street running through the two planning blocks that make up this option, and West Main Street as the eastern boundary. 90 students live in this particular area. It's one bus. The reason that this was not brought to the table was that it didn't have the number of students we were looking for. 90 students was considered to be too small of a number. Option one itself, you can see the green and the yellow, being the yellow falling branch, just for y'all clarification, and green being CES, CPS. And here you can see option one was planning block 119, which got the red line through it, and planning block 120. Okay? Then we got to option two. Option two was to redistrict the area between Park Street and Roanoke Street, with the Hans Meadows subdivision and Sherwood subdivision being included in it. There was 101 students that live in that particular area, and 2 buses currently serve those three planning blocks. Again, you can see in totality where it's located at in relationship to everything, but this is specifically the 3 planning blocks. So you've got Roanoke Street running right alongside of it in 460. So you get a good barometer of where that's at. Then option 3 is the one we've talked about. Option 3 from the attraction there was the 152 students. Okay? And as we saw on the Christiansburg Strand, the challenges that we have at CES and CPS, which are going to continue to grow over the next 5 years. They're not getting smaller. So it was, what can we do to try to minimize the impact to CES and CPS in our first blush, knowing it wasn't going to be done all in one swoop, but what can we do to try to minimize it on the front end? And as y'all have seen, and we've put on the planning block numbers with the student number below it, so you get an idea of where the 152 students come from. So the 2 options that the committee really focused on, and which we would ask you as a board to consider, is option 2 and option 3. Option 2 will take CPS, CPS, CES to a building utilization with 101 students coming out to 143%. We're still 264 seats over 100% capacity. If you look at option 3, it's slightly less. It goes from 264 students down to 213 over capacity at 100%. And that's why I've said option 3 by itself doesn't solve the problem. There's not one thing that can be done. It's going to be multiple steps. But we would ask from an administration standpoint that you consider options 2 and option 3 you obviously have option 1 to consider as well, but 2 and 3 are the 2 options that we have a strong belief in and think that puts us heading in the right direction regarding the capacity challenges at CES, CPS, as well as utilizing the asset we have at Falling Branch.
And let me say, we've continued to talk about this, you know, as an administrative team between options 2 and 3. And, you know, and I'll say one thing that concerns me too about 3 is we're taking the capacity to 93% at Falling Branch when we're saying we want to keep it around 85%.
Correct.
And there's construction going on in both option 2 and 3. Am I correct? Do we
That's
know
correct.
that?
There's a rezoning that's getting ready to take place and a development right behind CMS.
Right. So that concerns me about, you know, are we going to be, if we don't want to do what we did 20 years ago and
Right.
have to put trailers at Falling Branch.
Again.
So that concerns me somewhat with option 3, where option 2 gives us some space to grow. But of course, you know, with that, you know, obviously we need to come back and fix CPS, CES
Still,
and figure
yeah.
that out too, real soon.
Yes.
And if we could know that was going to happen, that would make it all
Yeah.
a lot better.
Yeah.
So, so we're recommending 2R3, and we're going to let you guys decide, but we're not going to even ask to, you know, even vote on this until the beginning of April, just to
Right.
make sure that the community gets all the letters that were sent out, and there's at least 2 or 3 meetings that folks can come to and, you know, express their thoughts. And, you know, so far, we've had several parents contact us about option 2 who want us
That's what I was
to go
going
to
to
Falling Branch.
say. Positive, and I like that.
Very thankful for that.
Which is great. That's great to hear. However, not everyone's gotten the letter in option 2 either.
Yeah.
We believe
Yeah, I
that
mean-
some that live outside, that go to school
So-
outside but live inside may not have gotten the letter.
So we're trying to figure that out. But,
Yes, sir.
But so far, a letter should have been received, and I haven't heard anyone opposing option 2 as of right now.
I have not heard any opposition. I've heard just support.
Yeah.
But you all would know too, so
Yeah.
folks contact you.
Right.
So I'll open it up to discussion with you folks to, you know, what direction do you want to talk about, 2 or 3? And, you know, we've got a few meetings to continue this discussion, and go ahead. It's up to you.
Can we talk about, maybe step back a little bit on the whole thing? On the, I had a question on, just to clarify, the committee was brought 3 options, correct? The option 1, option 2, option 3?
The committee started with the committee started with no options.
Oh, okay, so they
What the
created
committee
the options.
started with was a map and what the challenges were at CES and CPS from its current enrollment and its capacity, that we need to do something to address that. That was the starting point. Then using the criteria, developed options that would have been
Okay.
available. And when you look at trying to have a contiguous zone between Falling Branch and CES, CPS, it's limited because you're going to look at that border that's right adjacent to it. The other challenge you run into is where CES and CPS are located in relationship to the zones, the planning blocks that we're talking about. It's not a huge significant space. And then when we did the scatter graph and looked at where the students are in relationship to the school, in relationship to where Falling Branch was, all of that is what we started with. And then from that, 3 options were developed.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I was going to ask about mixing and matching some of the planning blocks, but I think you've answered the question. If the committee looked at that and came up with those options, I don't think we need to go back there, so.
I mean, we're open to anything, but that was the committee. The committee had a blank sheet.
Okay.
And we said that throughout the process is to stay on the blank, because no one person knows everything about this.
Sure.
So it was, we looked at what we thought was every different possible scenario. But if somebody has a different one, I'll gladly look at it today.
So I have a couple questions. Just for clarification, let's say we do option 2, that'll just put CES and CPS back at their numbers that they had last year.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to make sure it's clear, because one of the Board of Supervisors said that this redistricting would allow us to remove some trailers, and that is incorrect.
No, absolutely. Let me
Yeah.
address that. For one, let me say this, it will not put us back to where we were last year this time. How many students have transferred into CPS, CES since last year, Dr. Graham? Do you know?
132?
It's
About
132.
130, 32.
Yeah, it's like
And they're only
132
moving
students,
into
so
one.
taking that 100 out will not even get us back to where we were last year at this time. We had 132 students that transferred into CPS, CES last year.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we won't even get to that point. So we definitely can't take out trailers.
Right.
We're not even close to taking
Not
out
even
trailers.
close.
We need about 20 classrooms, and that'll get into our next discussion on phase 2 of this. But we need about 20 classrooms at both schools
Absolutely.
to make those schools work.
So then my next question is, if we put this in place in the fall, what happens with all the influx of additional students we get in the fall? Do we have projections on what those?
We have
that might-
projections, and we believe that we can handle the challenges that are there. But while our projections are good, and they may have been by professionals who I've had the opportunity to work with and
Right.
compare projections to actuals, and it's based off of all, the live birth rates and the developments that are currently on the books today and the ones that you project in the future, and listening to Virginia Tech and the towns and the county. At the end of the day, our projection's a guess.
Right,
I believe you saw that this year CPS's kindergarten class jumped tremendously
Yes.
to 170 students. There's no indication to say that's going to slow down.
right,
And I think Dr. Meyer is exactly right. The concern is that if that kindergarten continues to grow as it has, and it'll trickle through all of our grades,
yes,
we're going to have significant hurdles to be addressing on the CPS side, and then that's going to fall through to CES.
exactly.
Those trailers we have 10 between the two schools today. Those trailers are old. They're in
They were used in the beginning when we got them,
yes, ma'am, but they're still so condition today.
yeah.
And so
We're looking at possible more mobile units.
we're looking at doing some modulars. I mean, and our challenge, and let me go back real quick, you look at Harding Avenue at 147.1%. And nothing's indicating that school's going to slow down.
Yep.
Not with that growth.
And we're looking at mobile units.
And
for
so
there
we're
this year,
looking
bro.
today, we're talking to the town of Blacksburg about putting in between 4 to 6 modular units as needs, not just for next year, but also for the next 3 to 5 years, because it's easier to do it at one time on the front end than to do it later. But that's going to change that campus.
Right. And they're not inexpensive.
No, but, a 4-classroom unit is $60,000 annual rent. To purchase that 4-classroom unit's $280,000. To install that 4-classroom unit with the utilities and everything we need, the delivery charges and everything else, we're going to be looking at $300,000 to $350,000 for that. We used to budget in Richmond about $500,000, but where we located at, it'll be a little bit less. So it's not a cheap option,
No.
but our students are coming.
Yep.
The growth is here.
It's been here.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. You answered my questions.
If I may just address the board, I will tell you, when I visited CPS and CES today, I want to encourage every one of you, if you have not been there in the last year at least, go. Because I knew things were bad, but I didn't realize how bad they were. And Ms. Blevins and I got to go through, we spent about 4.5 hours today going through both of those schools, talking to the teachers, talking to the principals. And we actually had a 5th grade class there is over 170 students right now getting ready to go to the middle school. The CPS school has 8 kindergarten classes, 8. No walls. Some of the classrooms aren't even half as big as it is back here. It was unbelievable. And so I want to encourage the Board of Supervisors, I want to encourage my board and the public in general. I just you won't believe it until you see it. And what these people are doing with what they've got is remarkable. And these kids were walking around today greeting us with smiles on their faces. They're happy, but they need a good school.
Yeah.
And like Dr. Meyer was saying, and I have talked about this, I think Mr. Krantz and I had touched on this a long time ago, But he's right, we're growing. My husband tells me we're growing. He knows. We are not getting smaller, we're getting bigger, and that's a great thing. Everybody wants to be here for a reason.
That's right.
And it's because of things like our schools and what we can offer that some of these larger cities in Northern Virginia, with all this redistricting and all that, they don't want that. That's why they come here. So, you know, I know we can't do anything to fix everything right away, but we can't keep putting a Band-Aid on, and it's just not fair to our kids. It's not fair to our kids. They deserve to see them in these little spaces. Some of these, just some of the things that we saw, and I will tell you, a lot of security issues had me concerned today. There's bathrooms at the elementary school that has an outside entrance. The door is not locked. Is not locked. So I found out it was a town code. They saw about getting the door taken down, can't do it. It's not good. It's not good. So I want to encourage you all to go see it with your own eyes and just,
And these children can't wait until 2023.
no, this cannot wait. This needs to have been addressed before now.
Exactly.
But, you know, that's moot at this point. But we need to do what we can now
Yes.
to, everything that we can now to address this.
I
Because
think
it's
to
just
some
going to
degree-
keep
Yeah.
getting worse.
Yes.
And see, I even think when we say we need so many classrooms at CPS, we need to even switch that classroom thing. And I know is Harding Avenue still an open classroom?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't even need to
No.
call them classrooms
No.
anymore. We need to call them sections.
Yes.
Because last Thursday, I went to a Valentine's party for my granddaughter, and I've been in the front of CPS many times and in the cafeteria, but I hadn't been in the first and second grade area. And they told me how to get to her class because I hadn't been there. And she's like, you just go down there by that bulletin board and you take a right by that bulletin board.
Yep.
And it's back there by that green bulletin board. And I'm going, you're kidding. And I'm trying to read on every one of those bulletin boards what section
Right.
I needed to be at. So if something crazy were to happen, how in the world would anybody find their way to get in or get out? I mean, you know, it's, and talking about the love, the teacher that my granddaughter had said the other little lady's classroom beside of her was so small, she moved her walls or bulletin boards back to give her a little bit
Bookcases.
more. That's the love you're talking about.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
they have it, and they're doing it, and kudos and great things, but, you know, whether we need to get on that list of where when you go to Goodwill or go to Dollar Tree or General Dollar, and they say, can we take your extra change and give it to this? Well, we need to find a way to say, can we take your extra change and give it to the CPS fund? Because, you know, they've got all kinds of funds to do that, so we need to find a way, and there are ways out there. So I have to say, I like option 2. For one thing, I like the thought that some of those folks like to go to Fallen Branch, or like the thought of it. I do like the fact that we're not going to overcrowd it, right? We're going to do something. We're going to do something in Christiansburg somehow, some way. But we've just got to keep believing and keep hoping and make it happen. But I do like option 2. For me, I like the fact of the shift more than the go around. The folks that I've talked to in my community, the people that have come into the shop to talk to me have shared that same sentiment. So, you know, unless something changes, unless another option comes up, that's the one I like, so.
So for years, I've been telling you all, there are no walls, there are nothing to divide except for the wonderful artwork
Yep.
for the children, right? And to be able to navigate,
It's crazy.
you have to know what you're doing in those buildings. For years, Christiansburg has been patchwork. Add a few classrooms here, add some classrooms here, and here. It's time for that to stop. You know, it's time for some new buildings. It's time for folks to understand if we don't step up and support our children and our employees, because it's not just our children who have to deal with this. Because, you know, children, you know, however you make it for them, they're going to be okay with it to a certain degree. But it's our educators who are doing that for them.
Ms. Franklin, there were 5 teachers in one mobile unit. I saw
Yeah.
today. 5
Yeah.
in one.
So I'm just saying, for our children to still to be able to learn and thrive in those environments, it's our employees who are having to strain and push and cope
sacrifices.
with that,
Yeah.
right? And that's not fair to the employees either. I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna keep saying it. We shouldn't have to be putting pennies in a jar
that was just
or
an
somewhere.
idea.
for that. It's,
More than-
this is
Thinking
about
outside the box.
stepping up and doing the right thing. We have stepped up in every community in this county to do the right thing. It's Christiansburg's turn. It was Christiansburg's turn a long time ago. And we had the collapse of the gym roof, and then the folks in Auburn said we were next. Well, Christiansburg was next after that, okay? It's our turn. We've waited way too long for it. And if it means that we have to add a few pennies to the taxes to make sure that our children are getting what they deserve, then that's something we need to do. But there are other options out there that we have been talking about as far as how we can finance these buildings and not have such a huge impact on the taxpayers. And we need to look at every option, and both boards need to be open to all options.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know,
That so far has not happened.
issue that when we did Blacksburg, Auburn, high school and Auburn Middle, that it was an emergency situation, okay? It was an emergency to make sure we found, and built a school for the children in Blacksburg. But the issues that were going on in Auburn are the same issues that are going on in Christiansburg. Overcrowding, open capacity in the open classrooms, and children having to walk outside in the weather to go back and forth. That's the same thing that's
Emergency.
happening in Christiansburg. So if it was an emergency then, it's an emergency
Just
now.
now.
Absolutely.
And we need to be looking at it that way, because the children, the citizens in Montgomery County, in Christiansburg, deserve to have showcases for schools. We don't have to build, because I know Taj Mahals, but we need to build learning environments that our children are going to thrive in and not just get by in. I'm tired of the patchwork in Christiansburg. It's time for some new buildings.
So, Ms. Franklin, we almost should have put these presentations together. We're trying to separate the phase one with our options in it.
I'm for phase option two.
And so, right, so you like option two?
Option two.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you guys can, we can continue to talk about that piece.
I
But what's happened in this discussion is what happened the last time we got into the other stuff, and it all does go together.
It does.
There's no doubt. So what I'd like to do
Actually,
is,
before we, sorry,
Yeah,
I don't want to derail you, but before we move on from this discussion, can we talk about
the actual,
the issue at hand? Because I think we're talking in generalities here, and I know that there's been a lot of talk in the community. I think it's important that we've talked about this, but specifically the presentation that Mr. Krantz gave us is about this redistricting for these families in these 3 different areas.
Right.
And I still have a couple questions,
Okay,
at least
sure,
on
But
that. So.
again, it's still all related. We wouldn't be talking about this if there
Sure.
were other things going
It,
on.
I absolutely agree with you, Ms. Franklin. It is related, and I think the board. I think the board is unified on where our priorities are, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that I'm a representative from a district in Blacksburg, but when I ran for office 3.5 years ago, I ran on fixing Christiansburg, and I won. So that's still a priority. That's still our priority. I think the board is unified on that. I think at the same time, how we go about doing it, I think is, there are some nuances here. And one of the things I think that sounds to me like the committee was struggling with and wrestling with is this idea of, do we move more kids over and then potentially create a situation down the road where we will have to redistrict again or come up with yet another solution, or do we redistrict in a way that leaves us a little bit more capacity in Falling Branch to absorb some new growth over there? And I don't think it's an easy question to answer when, like Ms. Parton's saying, that you go in these buildings and you see the kind of the level of overcrowding, and you say, well, we don't want to keep redistricting. Well, maybe we should if things are that bad. And I don't know, even if tomorrow we came up with a plan for building a new elementary school, how many more years will it be before those kids then get, redistricted there? So these are the things I think that we do. I'm kind of weighing all these things in my mind at the same time. I like option 2 for the simple reason that of public support. I mean, I've said from the beginning that redistricting is tough on families and tough on the community, and when we do it, we should do it slowly, or slowly meaning as much as possible, give as much time as we can. And I think where we've kind of been shouldn't say blindsided, because we've known the growth is coming, we've been saying it, but it's really, we're seeing it now, and it's ticked up kind of suddenly, and I think some of our projections have been.
No.
It's just more urgent now.
Yeah.
It has become more urgent, and I think at the same time, I
We've
think
been
if you go
watching.
back and look at some of the projection numbers, I think they've been higher than what our projections have been. That's my point. So, and I think that we're seeing the same thing. I think we're seeing some of those things in Blacksburg. So, so we're already, we're focused on this right now, which is the Falling Branch expansion that we did, and the next thing I think on the horizon is more elementary, a new elementary school, more elementary work in Christiansburg, and then the high school, and then but in order to get to the point where we're not putting so many Band-Aids on, we do need to keep planning for the future. So we need to keep that all in mind. But I'm okay with option 2. It seems to have public support. My one concern on all of this is, I've looked at the timeline. I know you guys have reached out to parents. You've said you've reached out to parents. I've been a parent in this situation before. Sometimes you get things, sometimes you don't. Sometimes maybe you get things, you don't see them, right? So it takes time, I think, sometimes for these parents to be aware of such a large thing. And so I think I'm in agreement with what a lot of you guys have said about option 2. I would like to give time and make sure that we are reaching the parents in option 1 and option 2 and option 3 and giving them a chance to absorb what's going on and then give us the feedback. And I think then we can make an informed decision based on
why we're not
community
voting till
input.
October.
No,
Yeah,
I know, but I just want to make sure that we're reaching those parents as well.
And letters have been sent to every parent inside CPS and CES. So of the 5 letters that have gone out, while every parent didn't get all 5, they at least got all 3.
Okay.
3 of them. So I think we've tried, and I know it's a challenge because I have an employee who says a child goes to CPS. And it didn't become an issue until we got to the rezoning, and was it going to impact their particular child? I think a lot of parents, that's the nature of what happens. But as y'all talk about, one thing to keep in mind as you get into the what Dr. Meyer is getting ready to talk about, that's a lead-in. CES and CPS are old buildings. Okay? If you go back and look at the study that was done in 2000, both of those buildings were rated as in red. It hasn't changed today. There's items there that's over 60 years old. Just like we as human beings, the things we have inside our body fall apart before the outside of our bodies fall apart. But that's what our students are facing inside those buildings today. And I'm not saying, there's other buildings we have the same problem. So please, I'm not just saying it's only in those 2. Bellevue's.
Well, let me say this real quick. That reminds me of something. We've been contacted by several folks about the old CMS, and just want to lay that out there. That is a really bad situation there. And I know it was used for a couple of years for Blacksburg Middle School, but we had, I believe, temporary use permits for those, and we did put a few $1 million into it just for a quick
Part of
Band-Aid.
it, yeah.
But the internal workings of that place
We'd have
is
to gut
not,
it. We'd have to
is
gut
not, we have to gut it for it to be a school. Now, we are making plans to make it bring all
Operations center.
operations together in one place.
not
But
where
for
we
a
have
school,
Not where we have children.
yeah, it's not even close. But I appreciate the community actually saying, hey, have you thought of that?
Thinking.
I think that's great. I really do, but just want to sort of.
But I'll
lay
leave
that-
y'all with this about CES and CPS. So the conduit for the water, the conduit for our electrical, it's falling apart. If y'all remember when Senator Stanley came here and we had the school modernization, there was a picture of me holding that pipe that had completely rusted. Today, we can't get underneath the buildings to do it. If we have to rewire electrical, we're going overhead. And that's the old school. That's not the way we do things today, but we don't have a choice. So as you're looking at what Dr. Meyer is going to present here, please keep in mind just the age of those buildings and the challenges. But remember, they're not the only two in this district. We have other ones throughout.
Yes.
Okay?
Well, and if I can too, I know we took the board reports off because of the weather, coming tonight, but I had gone to town council for Christiansburg this past week, and one of the things I got to hear was one of the contractors that were building on Sunset Drive, which is across from Sheets back in that area, and they're doing 150
Yep.
dwellings that's coming, so, and they were talking about that, at one time, Auburn and Blacksburg were the kind of happening, growing areas, but that has subsided, and that is not where it's happening. It is all happening in Christiansburg right now. So that conversation is really starting to happen, but it's just common. People don't jump on the train until it's affecting them, and that's kind of just what happens. And I've been saying that about everything for years. People just don't think about it till it's at their door. But, it definitely, they were even talking about it at town council about how it's just, really, really just how things shift, and it's here, so.
Few comments regarding, Ms. Fraga couldn't be here, but she's in support of option 2. So, she shared her email and her thoughts and pretty much what we discussed. And I see option, or the phase 1 and option 2, and I'm in support of option 2. Seems like about the all 3 option as less destructive family-wise and safer travel-wise. And yeah, it's not a final solution. And what I see as option phase 1 is just a part of what we are starting, part of the operation. It's not a solution, it's just the first step. And I think we have to stop talking and start walking, because we've been talking
For a long
quite a long time. And I watch all the YouTubes of past 3-4 years, and we were saying the same thing, since 2005, and I got elected 2013. So, and here is 2019, and we're still talking, and I think we have to figure out, we have to cooperate, boards have to cooperate, and I don't think there's a magical one. But whether it's a formula of little bit taxing kids, little bit borrowing, little bit asking community to donate, whatever formula we can come up with, we have to figure out. There's no time to talk anymore. And it's coming to, obviously, Blacksburg as well, because I was in the Harding Avenue office for 6 years, and I made a copy for every student in the school for those times. And it was 210, 211 sheets I copied. Now they are in 340. So that's a lot of students for a small building size of Christiansburg Primary. So we have a problem. We have a big problem, and I think we have to not talk about the problem. We have to figure out what we're doing about the problem.
So, as we've seen, we can't talk about the first, although it's good. I hear a lot of option twos from phase 1. And so, but, we'll wait till April.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of meetings in between to
Give
make
everybody a
sure,
chance, yeah.
give folks a chance to come, and then if everything is as it seems tonight, we'll vote in April for next year for that. But, the last meeting, you can't talk about phase 1 without talking about phase 2, because it all goes together. And so, with what I heard in the last meeting, we started going back and looking at numbers. And, 2 years ago, I spoke to the Board of Supervisors in, I believe it was March of 2017, almost exactly 2 years ago. If you go back and look at that,
Video.
that meeting from the Board of Supervisors where I presented the budget.
2017.
March 20, 2017, you got the actual date.
I know.
I spent about 45 minutes talking about
Well, it's
issues in
still up.
Christiansburg. And since then, what the board decided was that we want to build a new elementary school in Christiansburg to replace Bellevue. Bellevue is about a 300 pupil school. We want to build about a 750 pupil school to replace Bellevue and then have a new building. Well, here's what's happened since then. Since you all voted, we've gone back and looked at the numbers. We're in a situation now that Christiansburg has grown so much that if we build a new elementary school, it cannot replace Bellevue.
Yeah.
We would still have to keep
Anymore.
Bellevue open. All right? And so, with that mindset, looking at phase two, these are just options and things to talk about. But we keep talking and we keep growing, and that's the issue. So, with this, I've got an A, B, and C. We haven't used A, B, and C before, so for phase two. First of all, in this phase two, everything is reliant upon moving at least 100 students from CPS-CES to Falling Branch. Okay, I think we've all agreed that will happen, and also. In all these options, we need a new a part renovated, at least a very large new part of Christiansburg High School and a renovated Christiansburg High School. So all these options include that. The differences are this. The reality of our schools in Christiansburg is not just capacity. We talk about capacity, but we actually have more issues in our schools besides capacity. And so, so in option A, would look at this. At CPS, adding interior classrooms. We need interior classrooms and not movable walls. All right, because all we're doing at CPS is we're moving the walls in. We're making them tighter and tighter and tighter. You new classroom, we just, all right, everybody move your walls.
There's no walls.
They're bulletin boards and bookshelves is what they're moving. Right.
Artwork.
You're right. I should not call them walls. And so option A includes adding that, adding about 20 classrooms, making it a 600 capacity school. Another issue that all three of these schools have is and this was mentioned a few minutes ago, with they either need a gym or a cafeteria. They need the separate spaces.
Right.
Because our schedules revolve around that situation. All three, CPS, CES, and Bellevue. They need updates. All three of those schools need updates for safety, an entrance that is safer, where folks are not just buzzed in, but there is a barrier between the office and the rest of the school building. At CPS, the parent pickup line at CPS CES, it goes from the fire station on one end to CVS on the other end. And actually, I saw it. I think it went not just to the fire station. It was backed up all the way to the car wash in the corner on that end.
Bad.
All right?
Bad.
And so that is an issue with CPS. CES, additional 20 classrooms as well. The back hallway does not have doors on the rooms. Same thing. They need a separate eating area from gym. The entrance does not have the safety entrance, and also the pickup line. Bellevue, this is just preliminary. Adding 4 to 6 classrooms at Bellevue, also a separate eating versus gym area, and also an updated modern entrance. And then building about a 1,400 capacity Christiansburg High School. So what this is doing is eliminating the idea of a new elementary school and adding on to the existing 3 schools and fixing the other issues at these 3 schools. Okay? All right, so option B is this. Option B is building a new elementary school, all right? Redistricting kids out of, okay, going back to option 1, there's no redistricting at all. We keep kids where they are from here on out after phase 1, okay? Option B would be redistricting about 400 kids from CPS, CES, and actually more, to a new elementary school and building the new elementary school. However, possibly not doing the entrances, a new gym or cafeteria, and fixing the traffic there and the safety entrances. Maybe the Bellevue, possibly out of the money that we receive from the county, which is about $1.5 million a year. In a couple of years, we might be able to fix Bellevue with 4 to 6 classrooms and doing this. This will be a small project. Also keeping CHS. Option C, and I thought we had to put this on here just because it's been discussed with such emotion in the past couple of weeks, is the redistricting of about 300 kids to Eastmont. But here's the thing, I am not in favor of option C because it doesn't fix the problem. Because 300 kids, K through 12, really sending to Eastmont, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't fix any issues in Christiansburg. You still have to do all the same projects. So if you got to do all the same projects anyway, just keep kids in Christiansburg and make them big enough and fix it. Okay? Now, so here's what we don't have on all of this. We know that a new elementary school, the last cost estimate was around $40 million, all right? And the new renovated high school was around 70. We're trying to get new numbers on that. Is it really that or not? So I don't have those numbers tonight for you. What we're hoping is that for the same $40 million, we can fix all of the issues at CPS, CES, and Bellevue. All right? And so there are pros and cons of both. I would like to hear, would you like to eliminate my option C right now and keep everybody in Christiansburg so we can not have to talk about that? Anybody?
Yes.
Yay?
Yes.
Okay.
Eliminate
All right.
option C.
So we will not talk about C anymore and no one moving out of Christiansburg. So let's talk about A and B or other options you might want to consider as we continue to move forward. And your thoughts on these possibilities, because we are thinking the possibility that we can do option A for not more than what a new elementary school would cost.
Yes, sir.
In Christiansburg,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And what would that look like? I mean, I know we have listed things here, but you mentioned the plumbing and the electrical, and would that include new paint?
Oh,
You-
absolutely.
What would that include?
Basically take the inside and you're going to renovate the entire inside.
That was my,
I mean, that's in essence what you're going to do.
Okay.
Where you've got windows that have a useful life up to 30 years. We've got some windows that are up to 60 years old.
right.
We have rooftop units that have a 20-year life. We have some that are over 50 years of old.
Right.
So here, let me make a comparison. At Falling Branch, I think we did an absolutely wonderful project. We added 18 classrooms. Here I'm saying 20, all right, as an estimate. We added 18 classrooms. We added an extra cafeteria area.
Right.
And we fixed the
office.
office area, and it cost us $10 million. And it came out to be a really nice project. And we're doing some things inside the interior school too. Now, with inflation, it's going to cost a little more.
bit.
CPS will cost more because you've got to put walls up.
Yes.
But the good thing, it's a blank slate pretty much. You don't have to tear anything down.
Right.
For the most part. So CPS will cost a little more. But pretty much what we're asked to do at CES is what we did at Falling Branch. And we did it for $10 million. Can we do it for $10 million? We're going to get some costs. We're getting a few folks to give us some estimates.
Well, they would have to be. Falling
Okay,
Branch
but
had outside
Falling
work, too.
Branch is also probably 40 years younger
Yeah.
than the other schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
We
quite
got
frankly, the patchwork that's already happened at CES and CPS, well, not so much CPS, but I don't want to walk into a building and it's like, well, in 1953, we added this one, and in 62,
No.
we added this. I don't want to see that in Christiansburg.
You would.
I don't want to see that anymore in Christiansburg. We should have buildings that look like buildings and not pieces that have just been added on to
And
buildings.
I think that's an architectural.
Right, but that's what Dr. Myers asked us to do. I mean, give you an example. Overby Shepherd, right before I came here, was an open classroom concept, 24 classrooms. We did that building. Now, again, that's a year and a half right now. We did that right at $4 million.
How did it look when you finished it?
It's a brand-new building. You can't tell it.
What else you do with it besides?
So we took the
walls
whole
up?
front, we repainted it, did a whole completely different roof. We did a real different front entryway to it. New flooring, destroyed everything in the inside, tore it completely out, went down to the studs, and then came up new. So it's a new school.
So
The
basically,
students walked in, and it's everything about it's different. And that was our intent,
I mean,
was to create a school that they would be proud of, that they didn't think of the old, it was new.
Are we talking?
So it's doable, but that's what Dr. Myers instructed us to do.
it made a believer out of me seeing what they did to the old Auburn High School.
Yeah.
I mean, that made a believer. For 19 million, it's a whole new school.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about getting under a building and
Right.
conduit and things like that, I would have to know that type stuff would be.
We will, because just for code, just for
Right,
us to be in
gotcha.
compliance with code.
Because, those are the things that's kind of like, okay, the shell of it's, well, is it good, is it bad? But, and I'm not saying I wouldn't want a new school for Christiansburg, I'm just saying, seeing Fallen Branch and seeing Auburn, which was a 1930s school,
Mm-hmm.
it's gorgeous, and it's phenomenal, and it's beautiful. And, so my mind's not closed to that idea. It's because I've always thought, the group that gets to go to the new school and that area that it fixes, it doesn't help all these old fallen down schools that other kids still are having to learn in. So I'm not closed-minded to this idea, but, if that's,
I think the additions to the old schools, two examples, I think, looking at what happened Chelsea Middle in the years. The additions to that school must have been not done very uniformly or not elegantly or not, it's so easy to tell that when you go to that school, like you said, this part is from, 60s, this part is from 70s, and original one being, really old. But, Auburn Middle,
That's
you
amazing.
really cannot tell that as an actually addition done to the old school. So I guess, I'm not saying one way or the other. I guess it is doable if we spend right enough money to
Make
right
it right.
renovation.
to do it right.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, we're working with Mr. Meadows, and we're meeting with him to come up with a financing option. And, it's at the end of the day, what financing option can we come up with in terms of total money to do whichever one you want to do, basically. And so, right now we're hearing that, 70 million is the max that they have. With the PPEA option, we can go beyond that.
Exactly.
Okay? And there's some other things that can be done as well. So we're working through that.
Right.
We just ask for patience from both boards to let us present to you all a financing option at some point here in the future of the Board of Supervisors as to what that might look like.
Yes,
We're
sir.
going to need more than 70 million to do these projects. Most likely, we're going to need between 100 and 120 million at the end of the day to do these projects and get it right. And so, it can't be, we can't afford it. We can't afford for our kids to continue to go to school in these conditions. We just,
Can't afford not to.
Can't do it.
I'll leave it at that tonight.
I have a question, though. When we built walls at Old Auburn Middle before it was tore down, which was their old Auburn Elementary School, they could not take the walls to the ceiling because of fire codes. So how, why, and how can you get around that? The whole school had, I think I'm right, they had to be
Yeah.
open because they said it was a fire code.
It's like the-
We'll have to be in
Christiansburg.
compliance with the current code. Like in Overby's case, we had to put in a whole sprinkler system.
Right, but I'm just
Which-
wondering, is that
which-
something you think we'll run into?
Yes, ma'am, I do
Okay.
believe that.
Well, there you go.
But that's all doable. That's the, like we talked about the inside of our body. That's
Right.
the inside part of the building that you don't think about.
Right, but it's going to help me think about what choice I'm going to go with if all we can do is three-quarter walls.
Right.
No, ma'am, we didn't do
think
that
so,
at
yeah.
Overby, and that wouldn't
Okay.
be our intent
That-
here,
but I mean,
because
that's
that
just a
doesn't fit.
question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's ask the architects.
Yeah.
We will,
Because-
and
I
that's,
think
we're looking at everything.
We will have same
Because I know for a
question.
fact that's what happened.
Christiansburg High School as well, all right? We will have same
In some
question
Yes.
fixing Christiansburg or renovating Christiansburg High School as well, because they have that open space on the central area, because that's an open school too. I mean, yeah, so it's a good question to figure out.
I think HVAC has a big piece of that too, because I've asked
Yeah.
that question before about Harding, and so I think for me, Dr. Meyer, I think that what I agree with the sentiments. I obviously want to do things right. We can talk about what right means. I think it means delivering what the kids need and as many of them as we can. When I look out to the future and I look at the growth that's going on there, you know, what I don't like about, what I like about the options that give a new elementary school is it gives a new elementary school. It's new and shiny and bright and, you know, I think that kind of a thing, and people can say it's a new elementary school, and, you know, but it doesn't do anything for the other buildings, and then we've, you know, those buildings are going to need attention. At the same time, we've got several of those buildings in other parts of the county too that are going to need attention. They're just as old, and at that point, you know, how are we going to do things, and what's the next project going to be, and, you know, how are we going to bounce back and forth and get all this stuff done? And so one of the things I like about option A, if we can do it right, and like you're saying, basically give 3 new schools, and if we can increase our capacity even greater and kind of, you know, kill 6 birds with 1 stone, if you will, you know, solve these gym cafeteria issues, solve the safety issues, you know, basically renovate these schools all around, and add classrooms and make them larger, which of course will make, you know, kind of make the whole redistricting thing a lot. I mean, there's a lot to like about option A. It'd be interesting to see how the costs come back on that one, right? Because I think that will drive that one quite a bit. To do things the way that we at least need to do them, it'll be interesting to see how those costs come
In
back.
fact, the next
So-
meeting we'll have the cost, correct? Is that right?
That's our goal.
Is it next meeting, or did we say?
We said the first meeting in April.
We said first meeting.
First
First meeting in
meeting in
April,
April,
we'll have the actual cost of,
And I
estimated
think
cost.
the option A, you know, I look at that and think, in a way, we're kind of fixing the other schools. In my mind, though, I look at this and I look at the growth that's happening and wonder if what we're really doing is we're fixing these schools first, and then we'll do the new Christiansburg Elementary School at some point down the road, because at some point down the road, we're going to need it.
That won't be in our life.
Yeah.
And also, the only way that I would ever support option A, not even saying I will at this point, but if I ever did, it would have to be noted that that's what we would look at for the rest of the county from here on and make it an option. Because up to this point, it has not been an option to look at that, and I would not want that to be an option for Christiansburg, and then all of a sudden, let's change. Well, you know what? No disrespect, but, oh, well, Blacksburg needs a new school now. So, you know what? We don't want to patchwork their schools. We want to build them a new one. So because that speaks loud to the community. I hear it continuously, and I don't want that to happen. So that would be one of my concerns, or whether it be Eastern Montgomery, or whether it be Auburn, whoever it might be. I would have to know that this is a road that we would travel for everyone in the community, I mean, our county, not just Christiansburg.
you know, the good thing about the option A, if you look at Christiansburg versus, you know, because Blacksburg is going to have to be addressed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is these are the same buildings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, CES, Beeks, and Gilbert Lincoln are the same building.
That's right.
You're right, you're right, they are.
Harding and CPS, they're the same building.
That's right, that's why I'm
So-
making the
So
comment.
it'd be
You're right.
great to have a model
Right.
Exactly.
to address the capacities. I mean, of course, you know, looking at the numbers, Harding's 145%. Wow.
Yeah.
That's like
You know?
crazy there.
That's obviously, I would recommend to the board, maybe it's not obvious to you, but that would probably be after, we have to do something there at some point after we get this done. So, but it can give us a good model as to how that may look.
I can see
So,
already 3 schools
Right.
over 85% there.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
have those
and
numbers.
certainly, you know, a lot of it has to do with land. I mean, we're fortunate at CES and CPS to have that extra
Right.
land, you know, whereas at Prices Fork, we didn't. We didn't have
Yeah.
that
old
extra
old
land
prices
to
for-
add additional.
And Harding is of course
Classroom.
questionable.
Bellevue's going to be a little challenging, and we don't need as many classrooms at Bellevue. But we've looked at that layout, and there's some things we can do at Bellevue on the current footprint. It would still remain a small school.
Yeah, but one of the issues with Bellevue is that's where a lot of the growth is happening in that area out there. So we may say, yeah, we don't have as much to
Right.
do out there, but what are we gonna do? Just keep filling up the other 2 schools, and then
Yeah.
Bellevue is where the growth's at. So you're moving those kids, basically redistricting them away from their homes.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
Ms.
I'm sorry.
Bond.
I was just going to make a comment, but when we did build Prices Fork, the board members at the time were also dead set on new, and that they insisted that we had at Prices Fork every piece of new building that we had at the other schools. Because I had even raised some questions about, you know, we had did this in certain schools, and maybe that might not have been the most economical decision. And the comment was made to me, no, they are going to have everything that everybody else in the county has gotten in this school. So we did have some thoughts on doing things like that, and I don't know about the land tide or whatever, but they were insistent that they got a new school. So that's why I said, you know, I think that conversation needs to come up for now and the future. So that way, people aren't definitely on one track, because it can get that way.
I think a lot of it will be, you know, what we can afford at the time.
That's exactly
And-
right.
And to address, you know, something as urgent as this right now, while we would love to do new, if the Board of Supervisors isn't willing to help us with that, as well as renovate CES and CPS, then we have to think outside the box.
I mean, that's
Otherwise, we won't ever have action.
That's the other reality. I mean, we were thinking one new school, I'll be devil's advocate, maybe put option star out there, but to reality, we need 2 new elementary schools to take care of all the issues we have. If we're not going to do anything to CPS, CES, and, Bellevue, which is, of course, it's even harder than to get one new school. So, and I think also seeing how good renovated buildings look like definitely gave me, a different perspective that probably I wouldn't have it otherwise back in the days when the other schools are building. So, looking more positive what can be done with the right renovation.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time at the VSBA and NSBA conferences talking in the spare time. I go and talk
Architects,
to
yeah.
architects and some of these companies that do construction, and I ask a lot of questions about this. And the reason that I do, in response to your concern, Ms. Bond, I think that 2 things. One, I think that most, I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of my community pretty well. I think most people in Blacksburg would much prefer to see a renovation happen on the same site of the buildings. So I think that has good public support in Blacksburg. I think people are proud of their elementary schools there. They like having them in town. I've heard comments from town council members where that's a very important thing for them. So I think politically it's not going to be difficult to sell that. I also think, I obviously these issues arise between the communities from time to time. Sometimes I think that this board's going to do what's right and what's fair, and we're going to make the best decisions that we can at the time for the kids, and we can talk in the future, I guess, about what's, how we measure that and whatnot. I think it's short-sighted. Again, I wasn't on the board, maybe some of you were. It's certainly short-sighted to say, well, if they had that color brick, I want that color. I mean, I don't think that's the way we're operating.
I hope not.
I don't think, hopefully, Unfortunately,
What was that?
that's not the way we're,
Fire
Oh.
alarm.
Uh-oh.
I guess that's the fire alarm, so. Yeah.
We have to evacuate.
Well,
Should we take
Is there
a
something on
recess? Ms. Chair, recess?
Yes.
As far as if renovations is what we're looking at, what we can afford, what's going to be the fastest way to get what we need for our students, then it needs to be on the table all the time. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
as folks have said, we've seen what can happen with those as far as Auburn Middle, Fallen Branch. But it needs to stay on the table.
Any other comments, questions before we move on? I think we're ready for the
Okay.
money part.
So next, attached to the, your board docs is the budget that we're asking for you to approve. We've added to the budget the request of the board from last week, which would be VRS for nurses, separated out by VRS for aides, VRS for miscellaneous employees, VRS for bus drivers and aides, health insurance for miscellaneous employees, and health insurance for bus drivers and bus aides. That took our total, if our numbers are correct, when it comes to what we'll be receiving from the state, which we don't know for sure yet.
Can
just
we
don't
get
have-
those up on the, is it possible to get them up for the public to see? No, sorry,
It's not?
technical difficulties.
Okay. Okay.
That's all right, we try.
It is online, if someone wants
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
online and actually pull it up. It's just there in the actual board docs for the meeting. And so it brings us to a total request that we will be asking the Board of Supervisors to almost $8.1 million. And so I'm asking that you all approve this tonight.
So move.
Second.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, what was the increase for all of that?
It was about $2 million.
correct. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it is
Went from
1.932.
6.1.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 1.9, so it's give or
2
take,
million.
yeah, almost 2
Yeah.
million. Y'all
And
had
from
a
the point
motion?
of view, from your
Well, hold
point, I'm sorry.
We had a motion in a second,
Yeah,
right?
we did.
Y'all
Yes,
agree- we okay?
yeah.
Ms. Franklin
Yeah.
and myself.
Discuss?
yeah. Any-
Seconded.
Yes, yeah, Ms. Franklin and Ms., thank you. Any discussion?
So, a question, as I understood from our last discussion, these are items that, correct me if I'm wrong, these are items that, in your opinion, we should be offering. It had not been on the budget before because of concerns about basically asking for
$8 million.
too much.
One more, well, yeah, I didn't include this in my original,
I'm sorry, you did or did not?
I did not.
You did
Okay,
not.
No,
yes.
this was not included.
Correct.
These additional items. And last week, the last board meeting after the employee group presentations, they requested these, and you all asked me to add these and see what that would cost. So we went back and looked at the cost and added these to this at your request.
Right.
Okay.
That's how that went.
And so far, we only have the state estimate, and we really don't have what we're getting from federal government.
Yeah, we estimate that in our
But
revenue.
it's not deducted.
Federal, we keep
Federal.
it consistent.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is, it's not included here. We didn't put the,
It's not in the revenue?
no.
It is in revenue,
It is?
federal revenue. Yep.
Yeah, line 59.
Okay.
So I guess maybe I'll ask it in a different way, Dr. Meyer. Why were these not in the original request? Is it concerns
Well-
about the size of the increase that we'd be asking for?
Yes.
Or is it have to do with, the competitiveness of these benefits packages for these employee groups or the like thereof?
The reason I did not include it in my original budget is because, first and foremost, I think our priority needs to be the salary increases for our employees, which these are certainly
Sure.
still our current employees, okay? And then, secondly, we need to keep our current employees who are on the insurance plan, hopefully not paying more premiums for next year. That would be a second priority. And then thirdly, we need a lot of teachers. I mean, we need to add a lot of teachers back. So after adding the employee raises, which we'll have to give a certain amount to get a certain amount from the state. You got to remember that. And then we're not competitive either in terms of our employee salaries in the first 20 steps. Between that, trying to keep our insurance leveled and trying to get the teachers that we need added back because of our growth and program needs. And then once you add a few buses and some small items, it added up to $6 million. And, of course, what I knew is the Board of Supervisors has an additional like $7.7 million. And so, typically they've been giving us about 55% of that, which would equate to about $4 to $4.5 million. And so I'm optimistic that I'm even going over that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I know.
Because there have been many years I feel like that percentage is lower than it should be. And I
Right,
think
so-
to some degree in the last few years, we've been looking for this assessment as a time to kind of make that
get
up.
some things
Yeah.
back. Something to note too, out of the 8 school divisions around us, and that includes Roanoke, Roanoke County, Salem, Floyd, Giles, Rafford, Pulaski. Did I name 7? Or 7, actually. We're 8. We have the highest composite index of any school division, and what that means is that's the state formula for funding. And we have the highest, which is about a 0.39.
Correct.
Okay? Which means that in the state formula, it's saying that the locality has the ability to pay. And so therefore, what the state is telling us is that Montgomery County has the ability to pay more than any other county or city, including Roanoke City, Roanoke County, and Salem, than any of our counties. And so that's something to make note of. Yet, we are 7th in paying our teachers. We're number 1 in composite index, but we're number 7 in our teacher pay. And yes, the county does, it's about 63% of their budget, but technically it should be 63 or even more if you look at the composite index compared to other localities. Because you'll see, you've seen in the presentation where, with the exception of Roanoke City, the Montgomery County gives us more funding than any other area. However, they have to give us more funding than any other area to keep up with the other localities, and the state says we have the ability to pay. And I wouldn't doubt when's the next composite index calculation? Next year? It's every year, right? I bet it goes up again because the wealth here is continuing to increase.
Well, and we were already penalized last year because they calculated that the locality could provide more than what they did. So
Right.
They gave us less.
Right. So
Okay.
last year it went up again because the calculation showed the wealth in Montgomery County is continuing to go up
Right.
more so than any other area. So,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Yet, correct me if I'm wrong, we did not make that up for Montgomery County. Like what we lost getting from the state because of our composite index growth, we did not get that from the county. Is that correct, Kate?
yeah, we
probably
Did we?
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, we
It's all on
lost-
how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, we made more up than we lost technically, but when we calculated, it's also hard to do it in the same fiscal year because composite index changes.
Changes. to
Right.
other
And I
thing.
think I calculated it was about a $500,000 loss just from the composite index.
Right,
But we did get more than that from the state.
okay,
From the county.
okay.
Of course, for the county's perspective, I think, usually not defending them very often, but the revenue base is very limited in county, and I think we were going to have that presentation. We took it off because of the weather, and we will hear from somebody from League of Women Voters, trying to study that on I guess, citizens' behalf. There are a lot of non-taxable properties in the county that Virginia Tech sits, the corporate center sits, and the National Forest occupies. And all the meal taxes goes to the towns and not the county. So I think, because I was thinking, how the state sees us, that we can handle. And I'm looking at the curve that county is trying to, keep up with it. And of course, state was going down. And then seeing every year their extra revenues never past 4 million that I can remember. Now it's more because the reassessment.
Yeah.
And then you figure out, even if they give the whole 4 million to us, it was less than what always we needed. Very, very last time, it never even came close. So I think there is a problem there too that,
The formula.
yeah.
The formula.
Yeah,
It is really, it's definitely antiquated, and we've talked to our legislators about looking at that formula, change it, and because it is definitely not a reflection of
Yeah.
what it needs to be. Because you got to remember too, they're only funding SOQ positions.
Correct.
Sure.
Probably
Well, that's the other big
half
thing.
of our teachers are funded by the state, and the other half totally funded by
Yeah,
us
probably,
as
yeah.
a locality. And it's SOQ is standards of quality. There is no quality in the education that we would provide our kids if it was only based on state funding.
That's right.
And so
And none of
we
the
do appreciate the
divisions,
local
yeah.
funding. I mean, because
Yeah.
our folks have done a good job and done what we can with the growth we've had.
Yeah.
So, not to be a broken record, but I'm not sure if I got an answer to my question there. Here, I guess what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is if the staff sees these, because we've just added $2 million to an $8 million budget, that's 25%. We just increased our budget by request by 25%. And what I'm trying to ascertain is if staff feels that these requests that came from our employee groups are requests that are needed for us to stay competitive in our hiring for these groups. Because they weren't in the original budget, I'm trying to get a feel for.
Right. All right, so Ms. Whitaker might be able to help me more with this. Am I correct in saying we're paying these employee groups more than surrounding counties, but yet they're getting some other benefits in surrounding counties? Can you come up and, do you know, I hate to put you on the spot and not have these.
It would depend on which groups, and which county. It's okay.
Right.
It's kind of different based upon the group and every county, so I would prefer to pull it together for you and show you, but, some offer some of the benefits to some employees, some don't offer others. We offer some to some groups, like our rate of pay, say for instructional aides, at the bottom is higher. We offer that as a benefit. Driver rates, I'm not sure
We're typically a little
what
bit
those
higher,
comparison
but then
are.
they have benefits, so.
Yeah.
So what we could do.
So it really depends on that division and
Yeah.
what they're offering to their employees, because you can elect those.
I'd love to give you that information in another meeting. Actually,
Okay.
pull some of the
I'll pull it
information
together.
together and show you what other folks are doing, starting pay for other divisions, for these same employee groups, and then who gets VRS,
Which
which.
benefits.
And who doesn't,
do.
yeah. And it'd be good to know across full-time, part-time, that kind of a thing, I think would be good to know as well. And I
'Cause
know,
that is an important piece in terms of hours, because we set our standards on hours for a
Sure.
lot of these. So if you're at that 30 hours, then you're getting the medical benefit, you're getting those because, that's what the ACA requires we do. So when we have a driver, say that is on a route that is driving 30 hours a week, that person would get benefits because
Well-
of the number of hours they're working.
yeah, and I remember there were things, I don't think we've done it very many times in the past, but I know when I got on the board, there was talk about, was it a supplement for,
Yeah,
was it
we
bus
got rid of
drivers?
that.
So that was the part-time incentive.
Yeah.
and
The part-time
that-
incentive,
That was
correct.
rolled in, which is
Sure.
why some of those salaries and benefits that you see may be higher, because before it wasn't additional.
Exactly.
And that was added into our base salary.
Exactly.
So that's why those salary rates start higher.
Some of them
because they
are,
rolled that
yes,
part-time
exactly.
incentive.
So it would be good to get some analysis on something. It's a big request, and I want to make sure that, that we're being, fiscally responsible on that request as well.
So I'll do it based on hours and then also some set years, maybe 1, 10, 20, so that you can see the number of years as well for those
Well,
folks.
that's a lot of work. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't need to see what other folks are doing. I need to know that we're doing the right thing for our employees, and to not have buses with signs on them saying we need bus drivers because they don't have benefits, and have folks tell me, today's my last day driving for Montgomery County because I have to go somewhere where I can get health insurance for my family. The workload that our nurses do, our aides do, they deserve the best that we can give them. And I don't care what everybody else is doing. We need to do what's best for all of our employees, and it's just as important to have the incentives there to retain all of our employees as it is for our teachers and administrators. So,
I don't need that extra information.
yeah.
I really don't.
So you're saying you want the information or not? We can,
No.
you don't? Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's fine. We don't have to give it to you then. Yeah, I mean, it is extra work. You know, at the end of the day, you know, of course, all is depending on what the state gives us,
Yeah,
what the
and
board
how much
supervisor
money
gives
we
us.
have.
Right.
Yeah.
Like every year, there's going to be decisions that have to be made.
We have to
you
figure
know.
out at the end.
And we'll do that.
Here's where I'm
When it
coming from
comes.
on this. If this is something that is needed, and I think it is in a lot of cases, it's something that I would like to have kind of more on the front burner as, you know, I mean, for a lot of times we talk about, well, we couldn't give our teachers a raise this year, but this is something we really need to work on. We need to do this. We need to do that. And we say that year in, year out, and then eventually it happens, right? And so, you know, if the nurses need VRS and they're not going to get it this year, it needs to be, you know, we need to have it as a priority. And if it gets cut because of the budget this year, okay. I mean, not okay, but, you know, but then
Makes
hopefully
it
in a year or two, we can get to it. And that's the way we've done a lot of
And
these
that was the
things,
purpose of
so.
putting it on here.
Right, and some of the conversations around these benefits have been going on for years.
Yeah.
So it's time to put it up there, and how everything's play out, once we figure out what our funding's gonna be, it'll play out.
Yeah.
But it needs to be there.
And then we can make it priority
Right.
the year after, till we get everything straightened out. Any other questions?
And I'll say one last thing is, I mean,
Sure.
these raises are really important to us. We've got to get our pay scale competitive teaching-wise. All of our employees are important. We have worked on the pay scales with every employee group in the
Yeah.
school division.
Yeah.
And they have been raised, every employee group except for teachers, and getting their scale at a competitive rate compared to others. And we've taken care of the other employees. I think we start off higher in every classified area than any school division around us. We're real close, but the place that we're really are getting hurt is with our teachers. Our teachers are not making what other school divisions are making. Folks are not applying here because the word is out that we pay lower than anyone starting out. And I'm not talking about a little bit. I'm talking about $3,000 and $4,000 difference to the next county. And you know, all of our employees are important. But I'll say this: our teachers are extremely, extremely important. The folks we put in front of those kids every single day to give them that education is extremely important. And I want the best for our kids, and I think we can get it if we pay them.
Any other comments before we have a motion and second? So now all those in favor, please,
As you're voting, I need you to look at the third page, because this is what you actually will be voting on. It's the same dollars, but we do it on a categorical basis,
Yeah.
because that's how the county will vote on it.
that's right.
And then below that, you see the school nutrition budget, which is the same budget you saw in the presentation. We've left it the same at this point of what last year's budget was, so it's exact, revenues are equal to expenses.
So we'll vote on that separately.
Yeah, we'll.
Correct.
Yeah,
I need two votes, one on
Yeah.
GP and one on the school nutrition, or operating and school nutrition.
So this is operating.
Yeah,
This is
that's the operating, and that's the categories they're under. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. And we approved for Board of Supervisors to have the budget. That's also the other thing.
And we will
We'll
forward
approve
that
them.
to them with a new budget book that reflects all the new numbers, and all the new information,
Corrections.
and we'll give this
Been
information
done.
to them.
We just held off making new ones for everybody, because we just didn't know how this was going to get voted.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's great. And then of course, on March 13th, is that the?
March
joint-
19th.
19.
19th, March 19th, will be the joint meeting where we will present the budgets, but it's your budget.
That's right.
And you all will have the discussion with the Board of Supervisors about your budget, which is the first time we've done it this way. In the past, it's usually been me presenting your budget and answering questions about your budget. Now, I'm excited about this new format, where you
And
guys
they,
can
and,
answer the questions
and they
about
will
your budget.
hear from Mr. Meadows March 4th, I believe. So they will know their budget before we talked about it, so they will know both sides. So it will be interesting to get together and,
School nutrition.
may I have a motion to approve the 2019-20 school nutrition budget as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Second.
Ms. Franklin, second. Any questions regarding that? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We approve all our budget items.
Ms. Grants, thank you so much for being
Thank
so
you.
long.
Thank you for standing so long.
Should have given you a stool.
I know.
Sorry.
The next item is our unfinished business. Is there anything, board members, you would like to bring it up from the past, or anything you think of? If not, how about a new business?
I don't know if this is new business or announcements, and I'll make it quick, but I did check to make sure there's no weather happening outside before I brought this up, okay? When I went to the town council
That's
meeting,
very
because, you know, I had all this stuff I was gonna do, it's at board reports. I said, for once, I've got all these things I did. Well, anyway,
Next meeting.
Yeah.
I know, that's what I said.
Never.
No, it's changed.
Well,
That's-
We just have it
Anyway,
on.
yeah.
That's
Okay,
all
I'm
right.
gonna say what I gotta say.
45 minutes.
You
So
can say
anyway,
it.
all this is announcements or new business, but when I went to the town council meeting, one of the things that they had presented was a doctor from the health department. And I brought her card because the things that they were saying was astonishing. And they were talking about how many students between, I don't know what the ages were, up to 25, 1 out of 2 students were getting STIs. And I've noticed billboards, I've noticed commercials on just the encouragement for testing. And they're saying one of the reasons that it's so high now is because there's so many forms of birth control that students are choosing not to use protection. It was astonishing, the numbers. I mean, she had them all. And she also went into addictions. And the number that's staggering on that, because with the opioid addictions maybe being counteracted a little bit because of the doctors are, you know, stiffening their policies, but heroin usage has gone up tremendously. And then today when I went to the dentist for cleaning, I was sitting there and they had a Money magazine, and the very same thing they were talking about, how just, it was like, I think they were saying $70 million, no, 70,000 deaths last year were due to drug overdose. And I can't remember how many billions of Americans were addicted. I mean, it was just the numbers that I heard for both of these was crazy. And I would love for her to come and do a presentation, because it really talked about young adults. And even though we may not change the way we do things with that type of family life and presentations, I just wonder if we could do some visuals in our schools. Hey, you know, use protection, or if you choose to do that route, or just be conscientious with your decision-making. I don't know. I mean, here's her card. And it really was an interesting presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And she had some staggering figures. It was
I
crazy.
I'm sure.
And this is Dr. Bissell, who I believe we already have a relationship with.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we interact with her, right, Ms. Diggs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty often, so
yeah.
Ms. Diggs will be contacting her to see if she could
Okay.
bring that to us, maybe.
And her presentation wasn't a lengthy one. It was short, but it was powerful, very powerful.
Sure, thank you.
That's pretty good, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, good.
Thank you.
Shut up.
You'll see upcoming school board meetings, March 5th and March 19th, and then April, and
That
then,
approval of phase 1 is actually April, right?
April 2nd.
yeah, that
Uh,
has to change.
Showing up on March 5th.
Yeah,
for me,
yeah.
but just-
Yeah, we're changing that.
I'll make
We
sure,
have changed it on future meetings,
yeah.
so.
And if not, now we are ready to get into closed session. Our next order of business is closed session. May I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss one personnel matter as authorized by Section 2.2-3711 of Code of Virginia.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Graham and Ms. Franklin, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in closed session.